Good morning, children. Today we are going to learn about very important questions of life processes, class 10th biology lesson, chapter 6. State basic differences in the process of respiration and photosynthesis. We know that respiration and photosynthesis are very important metabolic activities of organisms. Okay, what happens in the respiration? Respiration is a catabolic process. That means it is a process in which complex substance is broken down into simpler form. And that is the best example of this is the glucose molecule is broken down into pyruvic acid in the cytoplasm of the cell, and later it enters into the mitochondria for the next process of respiration, that is to produce carbon dioxide, water vapor and energy in the presence of oxygen. You might have learned about this respiration in the plants. It is a given flowchart in the textbook. What happens? What is the fate of pyruvate in the presence of oxygen, in the absence of oxygen, in the lack of oxygen? This we'll discuss next. And what is photosynthesis? It's a process in which complex substance is formed in the presence of several simple components. Say that glucose is formed in the plants by the photosynthesis by taking the components like water, solar energy, carbon dioxide and of course chlorophyll, which is already present in the leaves. So this is an anabolic process. So respiration is a catabolic process and photosynthesis is an anabolic process. And catabolism, anabolism together forms metabolism. Our body performs several metabolic activities we learned. That means making and breaking of the substances taking place in the metabolic activities. Let's see another question. How does transport of water occur at night in the absence of transpiration? So transpiration takes place during daytime. Due to the heat, continuous evaporation of water is observed in the plant body. So a vacuum is created in the cell. So the water from the roots, it will push upwards shoot system, and through the leaves, through the stomata, it will get evaporated. But in the absence of light, what happens? Due to the root pressure, which is already present in the roots, and partly to meet the daytime water deficit of aerial parts, it can successfully transport water. Okay, and next question. And ventricles are thicker than auricles. Give reason for this question. It's a very important for CBSE boards also, even NEET also. And we know that ventricles supply blood to different parts of the body. That means right ventricle supplies to the deoxygenated blood to lungs, and left ventricle supplies blood to different parts of our body till the fingers and the toes. Whole body is a pure oxygenated blood. So the pressure in these ventricles are always higher than the auricles. So auricles have to transport blood only from auricles to ventricles. There is no pressure is required there, and here ventricles supply definitely where high pressure is there, so that it can reach all the parts of the body. So always ventricles are thicker than auricles. One more question. What will be the effect of fall of blood pressure on in the process of excretion? And it will affect the urine formation. You know that blood pressure, if it is not under regulated condition, if it is high or low, that will affect the urine formation, because it may constrict the nephronic vessels as well as blood vessels, and sufficient supply of blood purification is not being done in the kidneys, that may reduce the formation of urine. And one more question. And sweat of a cell contains lactic acid. From where does it come? You know that lactic acid is produced in muscles during severe exercises, rapid actions. So during heavy work, and lactic acid is produced in the body. I think you know that in the process of respiration, lack of oxygen supply, that means insufficient oxygen, and that will lactic acid is produced in the body, and this has to be released out, and it will be done in the sweat form itself. Okay, next question. Why do muscles cramps occur after heavy sweating? We are talking about sweating. So after heavy sweating, we observe that muscle cramps, and these cramps are even some painful also, and this is due to dehydration or loss of nutrients in the body. Excessive sweating, definitely electrolytes are lost and nutrients are lost, and this is also, they are associated with heavy perspiration. So heat cramps are most common in the abdomen, back, arms and legs. During heavy exercises, muscle cells do not receive sufficient oxygen, so adequate oxygen, so that as it is not reached properly, so oxygen requirements may not be fulfilled properly in the body. Even the heavy sweating, large amount of sodium chloride is lost. So these muscle cramps occur due to the lactic acid fermentation, and it will release some energy, but that's very less when you compare with the aerobic respiration, that is in the presence of oxygen, when the body receives sufficient oxygen. One more question. And what are bicuspid and tricuspid valves? And we discussed about heart, 4-chambered heart. Top 2 chambers are auricles and down 2 chambers are ventricles. And we see that bicuspid valve is also called, consists of 2 flaps. The cusps lies in the left atrium, which in between the left atrium and left ventricle, left auricle and left ventricle, and which will allow blood to flow in only one direction, that is auricles to ventricles. It cannot pass the reverse direction, and this is also called as mitral valve. And tricuspid valve is observed in the right side, that means right auricle, in between right auricle and right ventricle, which also supplies blood only from auricles to ventricles, and there is no chance of moving back reverse direction of the blood. So only, and this is called like tricuspid valve. It is made up of 3 flaps or cusps. Okay, next question. In case of oxygen deficiency, why are brain, heart and skeletal muscles affected more than other parts of the body like intestine, skin and all? Okay, let's see the answer. Brain, heart and skeletal muscles are very active always. Muscles or organs are very active, which are naturally require more oxygen content rather than the other parts of the body. So therefore they are affected initially in the lack of oxygen, deficiency of oxygen. And do you know why do we feel sleepy after eating food? Most of the oxygen which is supposed to be supplied to the brain will be utilized for the digestion of the food. And of course another serotonin component is secreted in the body and after eating, so that also makes us sleepy and drowsy in condition. And next question, what is breathing rate of man? You know that unknowingly we breathe in, breathe out, we do not count at all, but naturally a healthy adult human being breathes for 12 to 14 times per minute. 12 to 14 times per minute, and a child rate of breathing is around 18 to 22 times per minute. 18 in the children you can observe 18 to 22 times per minute. But this breathing rate is increased or sometimes even decreased when the person is sick, when the person is pregnant, or sometimes even heavy workouts. Heavy workouts, definitely it will be increased. Just see children, when you run and work hard, your rate of breathing is increased. Okay, next question. Is product of anaerobic respiration metabolized inside human body? What is that? Product of anabolic respiration, that is lactic acid. Anabolic, that means anabolic respiration, that means in the partial availability of oxygen or lack of oxygen, which we have seen that lactic acid is produced. And so is it utilized in the body? And yes, a part of lactic acid is oxidized aerobically inside the liver and cardiac muscles. A part of lactic acid which is produced in the body is aerobically inside the body, it is oxidized in liver and cardiac muscles. Next question. And why does fat have more caloric value? More caloric value. Calories in the fat is very high. You know that the food what we eat, it will be converted into fats if it is not utilized properly. Combustion is the process in which the molecules will broken down and release energy, but for this process large quantity of oxygen is released, so fat is more reduced as compared to the other components like carbohydrates, proteins, other food nutrients, and so this is reduced more, so it requires lot of oxygen for combustion, so it is comparatively more oxygen, so caloric value is more in this process. Next question. Why is bile greenish, yellowish green in color? You know that the bile is secreted in the liver. Bile helps in emulsification of fats, breaking down of fats, and bile contains no enzymes. It is produced in the liver. And why it is yellowish green in color? Due to the presence of pigments, biliverdin and bilirubin. Bilirubin and biliverdin, these are the pigments. Pigment means gives color. So these are the pigments present in the bile which will give yellowish green color. Let's see one more question. Milk sugar is the name of lactose and cane sugar is the sucrose. What is lactose? What are exactly the milk sugar and cane sugar? Milk sugar is a lactose sugar and cane sugar is a sucrose. What are these lactose, sucrose and all? All these are the family members of carbohydrates. We know about glucose is the carbohydrate, but along with the glucose, maltose, sucrose, lactose, galactose, all these will come under carbohydrate family. So here the milk sugar is a lactose while cane sugar is the sucrose. And next question. What is a ruminant mammal? You heard about ruminants. Okay, and it's a herbivorous mammals. These are herbivorous mammals. Those organisms which will eat only grass or plant products, which has the habit of chewing the cud and possesses 3 to 4 chambered stomach, and which will digest the cellulose. And they also, this 1 and 2 first and second chambers of the stomach will have the fermenting microorganisms. So this cellulose is digested in the ruminant animals, children. It is not digested in our body. So these organisms bring back after chewing, after eating food, it will bring back its food back to the chambers and start chewing, and it will mix with the microorganisms, and it takes a lot of time to get cellulose to get digested. It is digested in the herbivorous animals, ruminant animals. Best examples are buffaloes, cows, and camels, children. If there are some examples for any of the question, please give the examples. Even when you are writing differences, herbivores, carnivores, and all, give the examples. Though it is not asked, give the point that make it point to answer even the examples. Definitely it will be considered. Next question. How are viruses living when they do not show movements? You know that viruses are connecting links between non-living and living. They do not have life outside the host. Once they enter, even we see that COVID virus, corona, why they say that maintain distance. By the time it reaches there, it will be crystallized. Even the virus like HIV cannot have more than 7 seconds in the atmosphere, cannot live for longer period. So these viruses outside the host, they are crystallized, they do not have any movement. But once they enter into the body, then they take the molecules of our body, like organisms, host organism level inside the living cells. Then it will start its life and continue multiply. So the viruses are in the crystallized form outside the body. Next question. Give one reason why multicellular organisms require special organs for exchange of gases between their body and their environment. It's a very important question for class 10th children. Even I have seen in the CBSE, many CBSE papers, this question. And unicellular organisms like amoeba and all, single cell, that's plasma membrane of this cell is directly connected to the atmosphere environment. So the processes intake and exit the substances will be taking place through the plasma membrane by the process of diffusion. Diffusion means from the higher concentration to lower concentration, that enter and exit through the process of diffusion. But in the multicellular organisms and require special organs for exchange of the gases and gaseous substances, because the organs are located internal organs. They are not at all directly connected to the environment. So there is no chance of directly to enter into the body. Our body is multicellular, very complex organism. Multicellular organisms are very complex organisms. They are having most important organs in the visceral part inside the body. So there is no chance of such process, like directly not connected to the environment. Yeah, very important question. Explain the process of breakdown of glucose in the cell. In the presence of oxygen, it is given. In the absence of oxygen, you can read the flow chart. And we have seen that glucose is converted into pyruvate. This process takes place in the cytoplasm of the cell. And this pyruvate, in the presence of oxygen, in the absence of oxygen, in the lack of oxygen, they act differently. In the presence of oxygen, we discussed, it enters into the mitochondria of the cell. And it will be broken down into water vapor, carbon dioxide, which is released out, and also energy, lot of energy it is released in the aerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration takes place in fungal organisms, even in some of the bacteria, where absence of oxygen is observed, and it will release ethanol component and product of that, and also less energy is released. Lack of oxygen already we discussed, and in our body, when the muscles are under stress and pressure and insufficient lack of oxygen is observed, so due to that lactic acid is formed and some quantity of energy is released. but very less. Next one. What is the role of saliva in the digestion of food? Answer this question. Saliva. You know, children, it's a moisture. It has moisture content, and it will add moisture to the chewing food. It has some mucus, and it sterilizes it from the lysozyme, which will kill even the bacteria. Partially, very important process, like partial digestion of the carbohydrates takes place in the mouth itself. Do you know, children, around approximately 30% of the carbohydrates are digested in the mouth itself, and it contains like all the enzymes. Okay, and this salivary amylase is an enzyme which will convert starch form of carbohydrate into maltose. Around 30% of the food is digested here. That means carbohydrates are digested here, and so salivary amylase, and even tyalin. This is also called as tyalin. Okay, next one. And what is translocation in plants? Translocation is different from transpiration, children. We discussed about transpiration, that flow of water due to evaporation of water and all. And now we are talking about translocation. And translocation is the process in which the food materials which are produced in the leaves will be transported to different parts of the plant body. That means in the liquid form, it will transport from in the form of liquid, and it will transport it to different parts of the plant body. Even storage vegetables, children, like root modifications like beetroot, carrot, and radish and turnip. These are all the stored food material, and also stem modifications like colocasia, ginger, potato. These are the stem modifications. These are all stored food materials. They will transport to the different parts of the body by translocation. Translocation is this is observed takes place in the special type of tissue. I think you know that vascular bundle consists of xylem and phloem, and xylem transports water from roots to different parts of the plant body, and phloem transports from leaves to different food material from leaves to different parts of the plant body. So this translocation takes place from the through this phloem to different parts of the plant body for its utilization for the metabolic activities. Children, this is source to sink. Preparation of food material source is leaf, and stored food material source is maybe roots or stem, but wherever they are, they will be converted into liquid form to transport, and you will learn this technique or concept in the higher classes. Next question. What is the function of trachea? Why do the walls not collapse even when there is less air in it? You know that. Trachea is a tube which will connect lungs, pharynx to the lungs, and to and from. To when we take in, from when we release out. Right? And also, this is made up of ciliated epithelial cells, children. That means it consists of mucus, and when we breathe in so many substances along with the oxygen, many gases they enter. Along with that, dust particles and all unwanted substances will enter, and this will block dusty particles not to enter into the lungs, and this is which will trap the dust particles in this level itself, all the dust particles, microbes, etc. But it will not collapse. It does not collapse if there is no air in it. Usually it's a muscular and very thin tubular structure. If there is no air, it has to collapse, but it will not occur because it will take the support that is C-shaped cartilaginous rings. It is made up, it is covered with this support. It will not collapse. So this will have, okay. Next question. What will happen if guard cells and stomatal pore when water enters into it. Guard cells swell. Obviously, when the water enters into the guard cells, it will swell, and the pore opens. Okay, next one. How exactly cell to cell transport takes place? When the plants, I'm talking about plant cells, and it will water transfer from one cell to another. So what happens here? And the cell and cell are connected through opening called as plasmodesmata. Through that it will enter. Even some of the hormones also will help in this process. One more question. Explain the significance of peristaltic movement that occurs all along the gut during the digestion. Children, peristalsis movement we observe in the esophagus. Okay. When we swallow the food, the pressure up to this certain level it will go, but due to the peristalsis movement, like a wavy movement of the esophagus, it will enter into the stomach. Fine. But after that also, from esophagus to large intestine, this movement continues. There is no pressure, separate pressure is applied in these areas of the alimentary canal. So it takes place due to the peristaltic movements only. And so what happens is digestive tract process in each part of the proper. That's okay. Major amount of water is selectively reabsorbed by the tubular part of the nephron in humans. What are the factors on which the amount of water reabsorption depends? The question is, that selectively reabsorbed, that means you learnt about nephronic structure, children, that a nephron consists of what is this? Bowman's capsule, and there are tubules. That proximal convoluted tubule, descending limb, ascending limb, and distal convoluted tubule. These terms you will learn in class 11th, and it will open into the collecting tubule. But during the process, purification of blood, most of the water get back to the body. Do you know, children? Most of the water get back to the body. That means the water has to be reabsorbed, but this reabsorption is selectively reabsorbed. Not only along with the water, some of the electrolytes also will be reabsorbed. Sodium, potassium, urea, all these are also reabsorbed in the body. So tubules of the nephron. So what are the factors on which the amount of water reabsorption depends? This depends on amount of excess of water present in the body, as well as amount of dissolved waste present in the blood, and which have to be excreted out, and also blood pressure. If the pressure is not sufficient or excess, will affect the reabsorption of the water into the body, and even some of the enzymes and hormones are not working properly also, it will be reabsorbed. It will be affected. One more question. And in the experiment, we have seen light is necessary for the photosynthesis. When I said that photosynthesis definition, I said simple to complex water which the plant gets from roots and air from the atmosphere, sunlight from sun, etc. How do you know that sunlight is required for the photosynthesis to prepare food material in the form of glucose? And for this, take a potted plant, nice plant, and see that leaf is exposed to the sunlight, and cover a little part with black pepper. Leave the pot in the sunlight for 1 or 2 days. Then go for the test. Take out the black pepper, and for this, to test this presence of glucose, starch. The test is iodine. So boil the leaf and boil the water, boil the leaf in the alcohol, and put a drop of iodine on it. So you will observe that iodine, the part of the plant which is exposed to the sunlight, the full part is converted into blue black, except in the region wherever you placed the black pepper. That means that black part is not received sunlight, so it will not turn into blue black. That means iodine turns glucose or starch in the starch into blue black color. So the part which is covered completely with the black pepper will not turn into blue black because the glucose is not prepared in that region. That means plants store food material in the form of starch and animals store food material in the form of glycogen. Very important 1 mark question. Next question. Thank you. I'll continue in the next.